The night was heavy with the kind of stillness that only a deserted highway can hold. I'd been working late again, my office a distant 45-minute drive from home. As a lawyer, long hours and client dinners were part of the routine, but no matter how draining the day, my heart always softened at the sight of a struggling animal. Over the years, I'd stopped countless times to help stray dogs or injured wildlife along the road, keeping a leash in my trunk for just such occasions. It was second nature, an instinct I never questioned until that night. The highway stretched endlessly before me, a ribbon of asphalt swallowed by the dark. My headlights carved a narrow path through the night, and the radio played soft, nostalgic tunes to keep me company. I was exhausted, the client dinner having dragged on longer than anticipated, but the solitude of the drive was oddly comforting. That is, until I spotted a small, huddled shape just off the shoulder, illuminated faintly by my approaching lights. I slowed my car, squinting to make sense of the scene. There, tied to a rusted metal post, was a scruffy dog, its fur matted and damp, as if it had been out in the elements for hours. It sat motionless, its head bowed in defeat, a picture of abandonment that tugged at my heart. Who could leave a creature so vulnerable, tethered and alone on this desolate stretch of road? Without hesitation, I pulled over, my tires crunching against the gravel. I grabbed the leash from my trunk, my mind already racing with plans to free the dog and get it to safety. The air was cool and sharp as I stepped out, the silence of the night broken only by the low hum of my engine. The dog didn't stir as I approached, its small frame barely larger than a rabbit. Its eyes, dark and glistening under my headlights, met mine with a weary resignation. "Hey, little one," I whispered, crouching slightly. "I'm here too. Help, you're okay now." My voice was soft, meant to soothe, but as I moved closer, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned my head, my breath catching. Two figures stood just beyond the reach of my headlights, half hidden by the dense tree line. Their faces were obscured by shadow, but their stillness sent a chill down my spine. My first thought was that they might be the ones who'd left the dog, perhaps watching to see if someone would stop, but something about their posture-ridged, unblinking, predatory set-off alarms in my head. They weren't approaching, just watching, their silhouettes like statues carved from the dark. The dog whimpered, tugging weakly at the rope around its neck, and I felt a wave of unease wash over me. My instincts screamed to get back in the car, but my compassion held me in place. I couldn't leave the dog, not like this. I took a cautious step forward, my eyes flicking between the animal and the figures. One of them moved, stepping closer, his broad shoulders cutting a menacing shape against the faint moonlight. His hands hung loosely at his sides, but there was nothing casual about the way he carried himself. The second figure, smaller and wearier, lingered in the shadows, its outline barely discernible. "Hey," I called out, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Is this your dog?" Silence answered me, thick and oppressive. The larger man took another step, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my stomach twist. I tried again, my words careful but firm. "I just want to help. If this is your dog, maybe we can." He raised a hand, cutting me off. "This isn't about the dog," he said, his voice low and gravelly, like stones grinding together. My heart stuttered as I caught the glint of metal in his hand, a gun, its barrel catching the faint light. Time seemed to slow as he lifted it, his expression cold and detached. I froze, the weight of the situation crashing over me like a wave. This wasn't a random encounter. This was a trap. Before I could react, the second man moved swiftly, closing the distance between us in 2 quick strides. His hand clamped around my arm, his grip bruising. "Here's how this goes," he said, his voice eerily calm, almost conversational. "We're going to take a little drive to an ATM. You'll withdraw as much cash as you can. No fuss, no calls, and you'll be fine. Try anything stupid, and you won't like what happens next. My mind raced, panic clawing at my chest. I wanted to scream, to run, but the gun and the man's iron grip kept me rooted. The highway was empty, the night swallowing any hope of help. Just as I thought it couldn't get worse, a low rumble broke the silence, growing louder by the second. Headlights flooded the scene, and relief surged through me as a massive semi-truck screeched to a stop just behind my car. The driver's door swung open, and a towering figure stepped out, his silhouette framed by the truck's blinding lights. He held a shotgun, his face a mask of controlled fury. "Drop the gun and let her go," he bellowed, his voice cutting through the night like a blade. The two men froze, their heads snapping toward him. I felt the grip on my arm loosen slightly, the tension in the air crackling like static. The trucker took a step closer, his weapon steady. "I'm not asking twice," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. The larger man hesitated, his eyes darting between me and the trucker. For a moment, I thought he might try something reckless, but the sight of the shotgun seemed to tip the scales. Slowly, he lowered his gun, and both men raised their hands, backing away into the darkness. Their retreat was silent, their shapes melting into the shadows as if they'd never been there. "Get in your car," the trucker said, his eyes still fixed on the spot where the men had vanished. "I'll follow you to make sure they're gone." His voice was firm but kind, grounding me in the chaos of the moment. I nodded, my hands trembling as I knelt to untie the dog. Its eyes met mine, and I felt a pang of guilt. I wanted to take. It was me, to save it from this forsaken place, but the danger was too real. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice breaking as I left the little terrier behind. I climbed into my car, locking the doors with a shaking hand. The trucker stood sentinel, his shotgun still raised, watching as I pulled back onto the highway. His truck followed close behind, its headlights a reassuring presence in my rearview mirror. I drove faster than I should have, my heart still pounding, until I reached the next town. Only when I pulled into a brightly lit gas station, surrounded by the hum of life, did I allow myself to breathe. I called the police, recounting every detail: the dog, the men, the gun, the trucker's intervention. They promised to investigate, but I knew the men would be long gone, predators slipping back into the night. The next day, animal control called to say they'd found the dog, safe but alone. There was no trace of the men, no evidence to track them down. Relief mingled with unease. They were still out there, waiting for their next target. That night changed me. I still stop for animals, still feel that pull to help, but I'm more cautious now. I check my surroundings, keep my phone charged, and never let my guard down. The trucker's face, stern but kind, stays with me, a reminder of the thin line between danger and salvation. I owe him my life, and I'll never forget the dog's eyes, pleading in the dark, or the cold glint of that gun under the moonlight. As a lawyer, my job often takes me across state lines, navigating back roads and highways at all hours. I've learned to read people, to sense when something's off. A skill honed by years of courtroom battles and client meetings. But no amount of skepticism could have prepared me for the encounter that unfolded one cold, lonely night. The road was a winding stretch of country asphalt, flanked by dense forests and rolling hills. I'd been driving for hours, the dashboard clock ticking past midnight. My eyes burned with fatigue, but I pressed on, eager to reach home. The highway was desolate, not a single car in sight for miles, when I spotted the faint glow of a gas station up ahead. It felt like a beacon in the dark. A quick stop to refuel and stretch my legs seemed like the perfect break. I pulled into the small, run-down station, its flickering neon sign casting an eerie glow over the pumps. The place was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels too heavy to still. I stepped out, the cold air biting at my skin, and began filling my tank. The rhythmic click of the pump was the only sound until a voice broke the silence. "Need a hand with that?" it asked, low and unhurried. I turned to see a man standing just a few feet away, his baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. I hadn't heard him approach, which sent a prickle of unease down my spine. He was in his mid-40s, his face weathered, his posture too casual for the late hour. "I'm good, thanks," I said, forcing a polite smile as I focused on the pump. But he didn't move. Instead, he lingered, his eyes scanning my car, my clothes, me. "Where are you headed?" he asked, his tone light but probing. "Somewhere close by." "Just passing through," I replied, keeping my answer vague. "Long drive home." I hoped he'd take the hint and leave, but he stepped closer, his boots scuffing against the concrete. "Long drive, huh?" he said, nodding as if he'd solved a puzzle. "You shouldn't be out here alone this late. Lots of folks around with bad intentions." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I felt my guard go up, my lawyer's instincts kicking in. He wasn't just making conversation. He was testing me, searching for weakness. "Thanks for the advice," I said. My voice clicked. As I watched the gas meter climb, he didn't stop though. "I mean, think about it," he continued, taking another step. "All sorts of things could happen out here. Flat tire, engine trouble. Hard to get help when you're miles from anywhere." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. His words weren't just warnings, they felt like threats, each one planting a seed of doubt. I kept my expression neutral, my fingers tapping impatiently on the gas handle. "Yeah, that's true," I said, hoping to end the conversation. But then he asked the question that sent my heart racing. "You traveling alone?" The air seemed to thicken. I forced a casual smile, my mind racing for a lie. "Meeting my husband down the road," I said smoothly. "It's about 10 minutes." Behind me, it was a lie, but it felt like armor. His smile tightened, his eyes narrowing as if he could see through it. "Smart," he said, his voice flat. "Always better to have someone with you. This road can be dangerous." He paused, his gaze lingering. "You never know what's out there." The pump clicked, signaling the tank was full. I replaced the nozzle, my movements deliberate, and turned toward my car. "Thanks for the concern," I said, my tone final. But he stepped closer, his voice dropping. "I could follow you, you know, just to make sure you get there safe. Wouldn't want you stranded." Every nerve in my body screamed danger. "That's not necessary," I said, my voice firm. "My husband's close. I'll be fine." I slid into the driver's seat, locking the doors the second I was inside. As I started the engine, I glanced at him through the window. He stood by the pump, watching me with that same unsettling smile. I pulled out of the station, my heart pounding, and thought that was the end of it. But a few miles down the road, headlights appeared in my rearview mirror, mirror bright, unyielding, and far too close. It was him. I knew it instinctively, the way his car hugged my bumper, mimicking my every move. My hands tightened on the wheel, my mind racing. Was he following me to scare me, to rob me, or something worse? I sped up, trying to put distance between us, but his headlights stayed glued to my mirror, blinding in their intensity. My phone was low on battery, and the thought of it dying in the middle of this nightmare made my stomach churn. I scanned the road for an exit, a town, anything. A sign for a small town appeared, and I made a snap decision, veering onto a side road without signaling. For a moment, I thought I'd lost him, but then his headlights reappeared, following. My every turn, panic clawed at me as I navigated the quiet streets, searching for safety. Finally, I spotted a coffee shop, its warm lights a lifeline in the dark. I pulled into the parking lot, praying he'd drive past. Instead, he followed, parking a few spaces away. My heart sank. I bolted from my car and into the shop, where a young barista looked up, startled by my urgency. "Hi," I said, my voice shaking. "Can you call the police? Someone's following me, and I don't feel safe." The barista glanced outside, spotting the man lingering by his car, and nodded, reaching for the phone. Relief washed over me, but it was fleeting. Through the window, I saw the man step out of his car, watching the shop with an intensity that made my skin crawl. The police arrived quickly, their flashing lights a welcome sight. They questioned the man, who claimed he was just making sure I was safe. The officer's skeptical expression told me he didn't buy it. "We'll make sure he doesn't follow you," he assured me. I stayed in the coffee shop until I was certain the man was gone, my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee I didn't drink. That encounter shook me to my core. I'd always prided myself on reading people, but this man had slipped past my defenses, his false kindness masking something far darker. Now, I double-check my routes, keep my phone charged, and avoid isolated stops. The open road isn't as safe as it seems, and sometimes the most dangerous threats wear the mask of concern. As a journalist, I'm no stranger to the open road. Late-night drives, remote towns, and gas station coffee are my lifeblood. After years of chasing stories, thought I'd seen it all until one night on a desolate highway showed me just how unpredictable the road can be. I was driving back from an interview in a small mountain town. My car loaded with notes and recordings from a day spent talking to locals. The highway was a lonely stretch, flanked by fields and shadowed peaks. It's the kind of place where you could drive for hours without seeing another soul. My music blared, keeping me alert as I settled in for the long haul to my hotel. Then, in my rearview mirror, I noticed them massive headlights, high and bright, like the eyes of some mechanical beast. A semi-truck, its grille looming large, had appeared behind me. At first, I thought nothing of it. Trucks were common on these routes, and I assumed it would pass, but it didn't. Instead, it matched my speed, staying just a few feet behind, its lights flooding my mirrors with blinding white. I slowed down, hoping it would overtake me, but the truck slowed too, its engine growling like a predator stalking prey. My heart began to race. I checked my speedometer 65 miles per hour, just above the limit. Any driver in a hurry would have passed by now. I sped up, putting distance between us, but the truck roared to life, closing the gap with terrifying ease. The isolation of the highway pressed in on me. No exits, no gas stations, just miles of empty road. The truck's headlights were relentless, filling my car with light, making it impossible to see anything else. I tried slowing again, tapping my brakes to signal my discomfort, but the truck stayed glued to my bumper. It was deliberate, a game of intimidation, and I was the unwilling player. My hands gripped the wheel, sweat beading on my forehead. I pushed the accelerator, watching the speedometer climb to 80, then 85. For a moment, I thought I'd lost it, but the truck surged forward, its engine roaring as it closed in again. My mind raced with possibilities. Was the driver drunk, angry, or was this something more sinister? The truck was so close, I could feel its presence. A hulking mass that could crush my car without effort. I scanned the horizon, desperate for an escape. Finally, a sign for a small exit appeared, leading to a country road. I didn't hesitate, veering off the highway without signaling. The truck followed, its headlights hovering at the edge of the ramp, but at the last second, it swerved. Back onto the highway, roaring past in a blur of metal and light. I pulled over, my hands shaking, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The silence was deafening, broken only by the pounding of my heart. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, watching the truck's taillights fade into the distance. When I was sure it was gone, I pulled out my phone and searched for the nearest police station. I drove there, still trembling, and reported the incident. The officer listened intently, his expression grim as I described the truck's relentless pursuit. He promised to look into it, and a few days later, I got a call. Dade found the driver, a man under the influence of drugs, his behavior erratic and unintentional. But that knowledge didn't erase the terror of those moments, the feeling of being hunted on an empty road. Now, I plan my routes meticulously, avoid late-night drives, and keep my phone charged. Every pair of headlights in my mirror brings a flicker of that night, a reminder that the road can be a dangerous place, where the line between safety and terror is razor-thin. As a paramedic, I'm wired to help. It's in my blood, my training, my very being. I've seen it: all car wrecks, heart attacks, bar fights gone wrong. But nothing prepared me for the night I stopped to help on a quiet highway and walked into a trap. It was late, the kind of late where the world feels like it's holding its breath. I was driving home from visiting my parents, a 2-hour trip through sparsely traveled back roads. The night was calm, the stars sharp against the black sky. I was lost in thought when my headlights caught something up ahead, a car parked on the shoulder, its hood up, and a figure lying face down on the asphalt. Motionless dot, my training kicked in before my brain could catch up. I slowed, pulling over a safe distance away, but as I did, a nagging doubt crept in. There were no skid marks, no signs of a sudden stop. The car was positioned oddly, angled just enough to draw attention without blocking the road. It felt staged, like a scene set for a purpose I couldn't yet grasp. Still, I couldn't ignore the person lying there. What if they were hurt? What if they needed me? Stepped out, leaving my headlights on and my door open, my senses on high alert. The air was thick with silence, the only sound the low hum of my engine. I called out, "Hey, are you okay?" No response. The figure didn't move. Their arms sprawled unnaturally. I took a cautious step forward, my eyes scanning the scene. The car's hood was up, but there was no steam, no heat, no sign of a recent breakdown. My gut twisted, this wasn't right. Then I heard a faint rustle from the roadside brush. My head snapped to the right, catching a shadow moving just beyond my headlights. Before I could process it, footsteps sounded from my left. I froze, my heart pounding as 3 men emerged from the darkness surrounding me. They held pipes or crowbars, their faces hard and unreadable. The tallest one stepped forward, a smirk twisting his lips. "Wallet? Keys? Anything you got," he said, his voice cold. I didn't argue. I tossed them my wallet, my hands steady despite the fear coursing through me. They demanded my keys, and I handed them over, my mind racing. One of them climbed into my car, revving the engine. Another grabbed my phone from my pocket, but in a cruel twist, tossed it onto the pavement with a mocking grin. "Want you stranded," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. They sped off, leaving me in the dark, my car gone, my wallet gone, but my phone miraculously intact. I stood there, shaking, the weight of what had just happened sinking in. I'd walked into a trap, lured by my own compassion. I called the police, my voice trembling as I explained what had happened. They arrived quickly, their flashing lights, a stark contrast to the night's stillness. They told me this wasn't an isolated incident. A group had been staging fake accidents to rob Good Samaritans. My car was found a few miles away, stripped of valuables. The police increased patrols, but the experience left me shaken. I still stop to help when I can, but now I listen to that gut feeling, the one that whispers danger in the quiet moments. The road taught me that not every cry for help is genuine, and sometimes the greatest risk is in trusting too much. These stories linger like shadows on the highway, reminders of the dangers that lurk in the quiet stretches of the open road. Each one taught a lesson about caution, about instinct, about the fine line between kindness and vulnerability. The next time you're driving alone at night, check your mirrors, trust your gut, and remember, the road may seem empty, but you're never truly alone.